Oh my goodness. I am so sorry. Hold on just a minute. Of all times, for someone to ring my doorbell for a UPS package, it's right when I decide to start. I push the live button on a stream. Hey, life happens. But welcome back to my little channel over here at the Pixel Tea. Glad to have everybody back, and I hope you're all well. Tonight is going to be a longer stream since I don't really come on here very often, so I'm going to take advantage and the opportunity to share some pretty insightful videos for me this week. I've been spending a lot of time these past 2 weeks researching and looking further into what's going on with these hurricanes that are happening, different things happening in politics, social dynamics. There's just a lot going on in everybody's lives right now, not just mine, but everybody's. So tonight's title is The Great Shift, Weather Anomalies, Corruption, and the Quest for Truth. So let me read this for you all. Let's see here. In today's stream, I will be sharing videos from various citizen journalists. Citizen journalism has emerged as a powerful tool for disseminating information, particularly in regions where traditional media may be restricted or biased. This form of journalism often highlights grassroots movements and local perspectives on geopolitical issues. By providing real-time updates and personal narratives, citizen journalists can challenge state narratives and expose corruption. Fostering greater accountability, corruption often thrives in environments where transparency is lacking. Citizen journalists can play a crucial role in uncovering corrupt practices by documenting events, sharing testimonies, and utilizing social media platforms to amplify their findings. Natural phenomena such as climate change and extreme weather events serve as a backdrop for many of these stories. These events can act as a natural reset, prompting communities to reassess their relationship with the environment and governance. Citizen journalists often report on the impact of these events, highlighting both the immediate effects on local populations and the broader complications for policy and governance. The intersection of technology and weather is increasingly relevant, particularly with advancements in meteorology and climate science. While technology can enhance our understanding and prediction of weather patterns, it can also contribute to environmental degradation through the industrial practices. The citizen journalists can leverage technology to report on these issues, using data, visualization, and social media to bring awareness about the consequences of human activity on the climate. In an age of information overload, misinformation and manipulation are significant challenges. Citizen journalism can counteract these issues by providing fact-checked, on-the-ground reporting. However, the same platforms that empower the citizen journalists can also be used to spread false narratives. The challenges lie in discerning credible sources and fostering media literacy among the public. I hope to showcase valuable insights into the complexities of our world, addressing issues of politics, corruption, environmental challenges, and the impact of technology. I hope to serve these videos to you as a reminder and the power of individual voices in shaping narratives and fostering connections among people, and hopes to contribute to more informed and engaged society. So that's what I wrote for my description to this video. Helps me focus and so that I know exactly what I need to be direct about. This, like I said earlier, it will be a longer video. So if you want to pass on by and say hello and pop out and pop back in, I appreciate it. So for the first video, it is going to be from a channel called Inspired, which this channel does inspire me. It's always, I just have such great appreciation and admiration for people that take the extra step in researching information and sharing it with all of us. And the human connection is an important aspect of life and this experience here in this realm. And this gentleman has brought a lot of insight with what's happening with the hurricanes recently, and I just want to share it with you. Just like in my last video, bringing awareness of how we truly are controlled is frustrating, and it's with the help of the internet and learning things from other people has brought me to going in and researching more information for myself. So I hope you all enjoy it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And as always, engage in the chat. And I'll see you in the chat.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's Monday, October 7th, 2024. The Inspired mantra stands: we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. Thank you for joining us on X Rumble and YouTube in the live chat. I see you beautiful people are already there. Some new wonderful names. A lot of people joined us in the last week. Welcome, everyone. It's great that you're here. And this is going to be a great live stream to kind of get to know what we're all about, what we talk about here, what's important to us. I want to thank Ronnie, our wonderful moderator. She's doing a fantastic job. Of course, Christine, under Inspired, the Wise Thumbs, my beautiful wife in the live chat, and everybody else. You guys are just fantastic. All righty. Well, let's live into it. Yeah, and dive into it, my friends. I'm going to ask you a question, and this is how we're going to approach this subject today. We had a horrific 10 days here in this, southeastern United States with Helene, with the terrible floodings, and that is an ongoing situation. We have another storm system, a very, very strong and humongous storm system in the most strange way moving in. Moving from the west side of the Gulf of Mexico to the east side, extremely unusual. Doesn't move like that usually, and we all know what that could mean, and that's part of the subject today. So where we're going to land at the end of this live show is the most important thing. So please stick around. Don't watch 10 minutes and then go, oh, this guy's all about. No, no, no. Just stick around. Sit back. But first, I got to ask you a question. We're going to set the stage here. The following things that I'm about to read to you and that you have heard about before, do you consider them pro-human, pro-life, or anti-human, anti-life? In other words, are they contributing to the positivity, to the expansion of humanity, to creativity, to happiness, or are they against that? Let's look at that. Okay, so I'm in no particular order. I'm asking you, chemtrails, the education system at large, chemicals in water, weather modification, geoengineering, mind control, fiat monetary system, religious programs like guilting and shaming, which most religions unfortunately do, globalism, 5G, 6G, 7G, and other extreme technologies that are out there, transgenderism, transhumanism, AI, smart cities, 15-minute cities, digital currency, CBDCs, social credit system, human trafficking, drugs, processed foods, pesticide, GMOs, big pharma, sugar, alcohol, pornography, digital health passports. Hold on. Banning medicinal herbs, restricting natural or energetic healing, restricting food gardening, banning rainwater harvesting, banning off-grid power, banning water wells, banning raw milk consumption, banning off-grid water wastewater systems, banning bartering and trade, limiting cash use, limiting seed saving and exchange, banning home-based food production, and on the list goes. So I'm asking you, and we could do this all day. You know of most of these things. So is this pro-human or anti-human? Does it contribute to your freedom, to your expression, to your ability to look after yourself, or does it hinder it? It's a specific, a real question. Because at some point, we have to understand one thing here. These things, and the list could go on into the thousands, are showing us a pattern. The problem is that when people look at how the government responds to certain things like this hurricane thing and how it's going to continue to do that, if people look at how the system operates, most people feel like that the system is doing the exact opposite of what they would do in that situation. Most situations have a very common sense response, and most people kind of respond in that way. Well, that's the common sense thing to do here. This is how I'm going to react to a situation. My neighbor needs help. Well, I'm going to go over there and I'm going to ask him what he needs, and if I can, I'll help him with that. Very simple. What does the system do? Well, first it calls 10 people that are far away. Then those 10 people are about to be transported here. It doesn't go straight to the people that need help. No, it first does that. Then it creates a list and more lists. Then it spends a lot of money on things that nobody needs. Then it bans other people from helping your neighbor. And eventually, when your neighbor is starved and doesn't really need any help anymore, then two people are going to show up and say, well, first sign this application, fill out this form, here are the conditions, and then we might be able to do a little bit for you. And then it uses resources that they never had and first stole from other people. What I'm trying to tell and say to you is the system is not broken. I know a lot of people want to talk about the Democrats and how bad they are, and you'll get no argument from me. But then we also have to talk about the Republicans and how bad they are, and how there's no real difference. And yeah, I know, I hear you, well, they're Marxists and they're woke. Yes, they are. But that is just a flavor with which they're presenting basically the same vision.
So this is a 50-minute video, and I shared it in my chat for those of you who would like to listen more in on the rest of his stream. It's really great. It breaks down and brings us back to a thought process of cognitively thinking about what's happening around us right now. So I highly suggest that you guys go ahead and watch the rest of it for yourselves. Let's go ahead and get the next one going for you. The next one is going to be from World News Report today, and it's going to give us an update on what's going on with the weather.
Hey folks, it is time for an update on the solar hurricane connection. The sun impacts tropical systems.
Excuse me, it's suspicious observers. That's who we're going to listen to first.
Systems with solar flares, proton storms, and geomagnetic storms, and that is amplifying due to the magnetic pole shift. In this video, we're going to review the video from February breaking down the peer-reviewed science, then the video on Hurricane Beryl posted July 1st, and then a few quick words on Milton churning in the Gulf. Let's start with the science. When the sun unleashes a coronal mass ejection, a CME, and it impacts the Earth, it excites the magnetic field and triggers electromagnetic activity below throughout the atmosphere. This video is from NASA, and the purpose of the video was meant to describe some of the ways that the sun drives the winds and the ocean currents. It does this by impacting the direct heating of the atmosphere and the electric currents of the global electric circuit. But even NASA's video doesn't cover or even mention that this forcing extends to nearly every aspect of the weather. We have seen the hundreds of papers on how solar activity impacts wind, ocean activity, clouds, rain, lightning, snow, temperature, humidity, and so it should not be surprising that it also impacts the strongest storms in the world, the tropical systems, hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons. This was one of the key aspects of one of the articles we featured earlier today in the morning show. The electrical phenomena of the atmosphere is gaining more and more attention. Where it was once thought to all be about temperature directing pressure in the air masses, scientists now know it is a much more dynamic process. For those who are new here, in Chapter 5 of our textbook, there is a good deal of information about the sun's impact on major tropical storm systems, and extratropical storms for that matter. There are studies that confirm this connection with solar flares, solar wind data, solar energetic proton storms, and of course, geomagnetic storms from when the CMEs impact our planet. And as they discover this more and more, it extends to the extratropical regions and even severe thunderstorms over land. Many of you remember Ferris Wald, who won the National Science Championship for proving that coronal hole streams and tropical cyclones were related, a pretty amazing feat for a middle school student. And since our textbook came out, there have been several follow-up studies that only bolster the previously discovered connection between the sun and tropical systems. Ones like this have even suggested it's not just the formation and intensification of those storms, but they're likely tracks to landfall that are impacted by the sun. Other studies dive deep into specific regions of the ocean and find all the same, while also driving into the mechanistic action of how it all works. So this morning's paper, while exciting to see, was not unexpected. Indeed, there are no countervailing studies in the last several years questioning this connection, and yet the sun's impact on storms remains outside of all climate models. It's a shame. But whether it is a solar flare juicing up the atmosphere, the solar wind pressure forcing Van Allen electrons downward, or the geomagnetic storm activity spreading across the globe, the global electric up and down circuit becomes excited. And as we discussed in a video just a few days ago, that electric circuit activity impacts the pressure cells, wind, clouds, and more. Later this year, the sunspot cycle will be peaking as hurricane season rolls around in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific, and we will all get an excellent opportunity to see just how much the sun works these great storms in real time. Well, it's hurricane season now. We had the first serious geomagnetic storm of the period on June 28th, and during its impact on the atmosphere, just as predicted, just as we've been showing for several years, it triggered the first serious hurricane. And serious doesn't really do it justice. It was the furthest east storm at this time of year to form, the earliest Category 4 on record in the Atlantic Basin, and the strongest to ever hit these islands. Furthermore, its pace of intensification is utterly unprecedented. As of midday today, it's still intensifying. So let's go a bit deeper on the background. The papers on solar storm forcing of tropical activity have been more numerous in the last decade than in the entire history of science that came before. Once the door was opened, it was like a flood, with literally every study looking at the topic finding the same thing. Solar storms impact the tropical systems in a significant way, with special attention being paid to the geomagnetic aspect. That's what we just had happen this past week. Studies have even gone back in time and found major correlations, like with Hurricane Katrina, the super outbreak in 2015 during a similarly strong solar storm surge, the triple storm system in 2017 that followed the largest solar storms of cycle 24, and even elsewhere in the Pacific, where Haiyan broke records on the heels of a powerful solar flare and magnetic crochet event in the atmosphere resulting from it. Also noteworthy, the tropical storm Chris has formed during this period this week, currently pounding Mexico. And by the way, the average third named storm of the year usually happens around early August. This has been the quintessential event we were talking about in literally every way you can slice it. Remember, every tropical storm is impacted by the global electric circuit, and every aspect of space weather affects that circuit. 4 months ago, we said to watch for major hurricanes to be triggered by solar storms, and that's literally what is happening as we speak. Solar maximum is in full stride. Hurricane season is here. Expect more in the months ahead. So, folks, here we are again. Several X-class solar flares the last few days, including one last night, adding to the level 3 geomagnetic storm taking place. That's two of the biggest ways the sun impacts the tropics combined at the same time. And that's why Hurricane Milton went into record intensification and is one of the strongest storms on record today. These connections are very robust, and they're getting tighter as the magnetic field weakens in the ongoing magnetic pole shift. We've been saying to expect this for years. We still expect it, and we expect the first Category 6 hurricane in the next few years as well. I'll see you in the morning for the Daily Show.
Okay, so I've shared suspicious observers information many times before on here. I respect what he always has to offer in terms of information and updated information. So let's switch gears here for just a moment. So you can see, I'm going to share with you on my page again. These are other channels that I like to watch every day that do live streams on the updated weather and what's happening with the sun. This would be Wages World. He was up nice and early this morning, giving us an update on what was happening on with this proton radiation storm that we're having right now, which is highly influencing what's happening with the hurricane right now. Dobsonian Power, he does the same thing. He does live streams every day. And he is also keeping an eye on what's going on with this comet. So I do use my community page almost like a Facebook, and I like to put updated things on here as well. So let's go back to here. On World News Report today, here's what he had for us for a weather update for today.
Geomagnetic storm, or were a few hours ago. We're in a solar storm currently. We have a polar cap absorption event going on. We've just had a second X flare within the last 24 hours, and things are blowing up. So as you can see here, it says from 10 to 1 last night, Central Time here in the US, we had a geomagnetic storm, a KP 4.67. Now we'll try to determine where that came from now as we look into the X flare that just popped off. All right, over to goes X-ray flux, starting out with that G1 geomagnetic storm we just saw from 10 to 1 last night Central Time here in the U.S. The KP 4.67. We see absolutely nothing that could have caused that unless it came in very quickly and was caused by this X2 and X1 flare here that had very little signature when they popped off. That storm would have had to get here, well, very quickly in just over 24 hours. Now, we've also had two X flares today, an X 1.84, and actually they haven't named this yet, but we'll try to get a reading on it. An X 1.4 sounds awful high for where it is, but that's what the reading says here. We will see if the info has been updated. Now, the first X 1.84, well, that came from sunspot region, AR 3848. We've been watching that sunspot, and it's been very active since it's come around the limb. This X flare here, the X 1.4 flare, actually originated from one of the sunspots that's going around the far limb. It looks like X 3844, our old friend. So 2 days ago, we had the X 2.19 that I showed, followed by quickly the X1 flare that could have caused the G1 4.67 KP index geomagnetic storm, although it would have had to arrive very quickly, especially based on how long the other larger X flares, the X 9.1.
So I am going to put the rest of his report that he had. It's about 15 more minutes. And I'm going to post that link here in the chat. But I've got quite a few videos in here that I just want to share little bits and pieces with you guys. So let's see here. What is on for our next video? The next video, oh, it's just showing those X flares that he was speaking about. That's what they look like. It's got a weird sound there to it. But so those were popping off when this hurricane was intensifying. This is what the sun was doing. It's pretty intense. Boom. And this is what created the
And I love that picture
auroras.
behind you, Karen. Everybody
This is in
wants
Philadelphia.
to see the aurora, and you got to see it locally if you were in the right spot.
If you were in the right spot, like Steph here. So Steph Pangburn from Langhorne, Bucks County sent this into us just several hours ago. In the overnight hours, she caught this amazing sight of the aurora just in her backyard. She's looking outside and she saw the pink sky.
In
You can kind of see it
Philadelphia.
even with the naked eye, a little bit of the pink sky. But then just with her iPhone, she captured this beautiful shot. We had pretty clear skies overnight, a crisp night, and you were catching a little bit of the aurora even locally. So I went to see tonight's aurora forecast on NOAA as site, and you can see this red line is the southernmost viewing area. So for tonight, it does cut through Pennsylvania.
What's up, everyone?
So we're going to switch gears a little bit here because a lot of people have been questioning what's been going on with HAARP and this modified weather that has been happening. And Static in the Attic had a really great, he's got this footage that I've seen, a handful of videos playing about the technology that's lighting up on the radar maps and how it lit up when Hurricane Helene blasted through. So I just wanted to share this with you.
Everybody, I was watching Monkey Works last night and he showed this, and this is the one that's just now about to make landfall. So this is showing about 24 hours before that. All of those blue circles are the RAD system firing off. But the monitoring system that he's using here stops at Texas. So we don't know if this is going on down in the Gulf. I just showed this in another video, but Ryan Hall, y'all, was talking about this system last week, and he described it as being nothing to worry about, nothing but a little rainmaker. And it was aimed right at Texas, Louisiana, Alabama. So this went from a big projected nothing burger to the biggest intensification anybody's ever seen. They're even talking about adding another number to the categories. But this was projected to go north. That forecast was the exact same day that Alejandro Mayorkas said that we're expecting another one. And we can't do anything about Appalachia because of what is imminent. We just had the worst one in 20 years, but no, we're expecting another one. And then there was whatever this was, everything nice and smooth, little red flash, and whole thing gets all crazy. Now, back to what Monkey Works was showing, these are all popping off, and it doesn't seem to want to go that way. And then I found this about the other one. They showed this on Redacted. I'll let you guys just watch it. It's going to play through for a few minutes. It's pretty interesting, though.
So for anyone who hasn't seen this yet, those blue pulsating areas supposedly is HARP, and it's blasting out some kind of frequency to steer this storm somehow.
Especially that blast, and then it disintegrates. So I'm just going to gossip while we watch this. I've been curious about Redacted for a long time because somehow they managed to come on and start a show talking about all of the things that nobody else could talk about. And they were allowed to blow up to millions of people. So that's pretty fishy. But I got to say, they do consistently put out good information. And like I've said many times, I don't care who's saying something if it's true. I can agree with everything they say right up until they bust out the alien invasion narrative, and then, yeah, I'm good. Which, if there's actually anything there to that, then that's probably why they're allowed. Anyway, I would have rather just put some music on and let you guys listen to that instead of me rambling. But here it is sped up, and it looks like there's a wall right here. This is like water trying to flow around a rock in a river. Now, nothing pops off up here in the northeast while all that's going on towards the west there. And then you get up to right there and you get a solid wall of pings across the north and then all the way across the board. Now, going super fast, we'll have the north wall coming up, still going, bam, right there, right when it's getting over Georgia. So I don't know. It'll be coming on shore any minute now, and we'll find out if it's hype or.
This technology is something else. Messing with natural creation. So this is now Mr. MBB 333 telling us what happened when that proton storm hit.
What's up, guys? I don't know if you know the specifics on what's going on with this comet. It should be visible tonight during sunset. So if you can carefully look at the western sky during sunset, you might be able to see the comet starting to reveal itself. As it gets closer to the sun, the tail is actually going to get bigger, but it's also behaving as if it knows the comet's in the neighborhood. It just hurled another X-class solar flare, this one coming squarely at Earth as we are in the middle of a very strong proton storm. You can see the north and south poles just overloaded with energy from the sun and the very strong X-class solar flare. Here's a view, an updated view of the comet as it's getting closer and closer to the sun. And you can see over here, this is the Earth on the left-hand side of the field of view. You're going to see the tail practically engulf the Earth, or at least it appears to engulf the Earth. Right there you go. The sun's over there. There's the solar flare, the X-class solar flare. That it right there. There was the first one, and here comes the second one. That one right there being 3.1 million miles per hour. That's how fast that CME came off the surface of the sun. Right.
So these are, it's interesting that I see a pattern going on here with the signs in the heavens. It's rocking and rolling here and in the heavens. There's just a lot going on. And it's kind of hard to keep up with all of it. But when the Hurricane Helene was going on over here, this is what was happening in Nepal. This was 11 days ago. So it's just going to keep on showing us more footage of the flooding in Nepal. And this is what happened in Acapulco. So they were under huge flood advisory as well. More footage of the aftermath there. Resembles North Carolina. And this was, there's more footage. This was in Thailand. These were elephants. They were trying to rescue the elephants, and this poor blind elephant was trying to follow. They're communicating with one another with the blind elephant. Sweet thing. And this is partially what's going on. This is what also creates extinctions. So as you can see, biological life is greatly being interrupted. All of the landslides and such are happening. It's a very scary time. This is, I think, from a day ago. This was in Canada. They heard those sounds as well. I'm not so sure what that was, but I've in the past connected when they have the hadron colliders turned on That's the only thing that I can find that is similar. But there's all those talks about underground tunnels and stuff, and who knows? But that's what they were hearing. And then this is today in Florida this morning.
Good day, everyone. We are coming on the air with breaking news about Hurricane Milton, the storm we've been talking about for days, a powerful Category 4 storm as of this moment. It has already started spawning a series of dangerous tornadoes touching down throughout south central Florida. The highest risk for those tornadoes runs through this afternoon. All of that, of course, ahead of the storm, ahead of the hurricane actually coming ashore, which is expected very late this evening or into tomorrow morning. Let's go to Dana Griffin in Naples, Florida. Dana, what do we know about these tornadoes? Have we had any reports yet of where they actually touched down?
So we're trying to get that information to you now, Kate. I can tell you that we were at Naples Beach just moments ago, and our phone started alerting because of the tornado warnings that were going off. We were seeing lightning at the beach, and the reason we were there was because several surfers were still in the water as that storm surge on the beach itself. Some 2-foot high waves were coming through. Saw several people who were out there, and so that's why we left and came to a garage so that we could be safe. But we are getting alerts that there have been tornadoes that have touched down, as you mentioned, in south central Florida. We are in Naples, and because we are pretty close to that,
It's just a lot going on. A lot going on. I found a video here that's going to talk about a reset that has happened before with weather and how a new government came in and established a new world. This is called Ancient Ruins in America, The Reset Before Columbus. And this is from a channel called Tales of the Old World.
Was a popular belief among the Christian world.
Excuse me.
That the
I thought that I had fixed that, but I didn't.
pre-Columbus America was a very unique place. While the rest of the world explored and discovered new lands, the civilizations in the Americas were locked in isolation. A once great civilization that had metallurgy and a huge system of mound cities all across the mainland US was completely wiped out, leaving their pyramid.
The reason why I want to play this is because potentially something like this can happen all over again.
Mounds in ruin and regressing back into the Stone Age with only few pockets of cultures that still use things like copper tools. All before the Europeans arrived. The civilization I'm referring to is known as the Mississippian culture. They were the most organized and widespread culture in the US and Canada, equal only to that of the Aztec to the south of them and Inca in Peru. But when the first explorers arrived, all their cities were already buried, and their once huge pyramids had been left to ruin and taken over by nature. Some of them still exist in people's yards and on golf courses or parks, completely unrecognized. This is a truly lost civilization. And the only reason we really know about them is because they left behind such impressive structures. Similar to something you'd see in Mexico or Guatemala or Peru. And they were completely abandoned in the mid-14th century AD, over 100 years before Columbus arrived in the Caribbean. And this wasn't the only civilization that was completely wiped out just before the arrival of the Spanish. Archaeological evidence shows that Chichen Itza itself was still in use sometime around the 13th century, but by the time the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, it was no longer a major inhabited center, only being used as a religious place of pilgrimage to remember the old days of the Mayan classical period. To the north of the Mesoamericans, in the American Southwest and northern Mexico, multiple cultures were experiencing extreme changes and were migrating away from their ancestral homelands, or disappearing completely, such as the ancestral Pueblo and Hohokam peoples. An old civilization known as the Anasazi disappeared sometime around the year 1275 to 1300 AD, said to be due to massive droughts and climate change in the region. However, historians say other factors may have been at play as well. Even the Aztecs said they themselves migrated from somewhere in the north during the 13th century. The Sican culture on the northern coast of Peru was wiped out around 1375 due to a severe El Nino event that caused devastating floods and droughts. And even the Norse settlements on
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Greenland fell into decline and were abandoned sometime around the 15th century. Most say due to the Little Ice Age period from about 1250 to 1860 AD. And multiple other cultures declined and or died out around this time period as well, such as the Tiwanaku, the Wari culture, the Toltec, the Terona culture, the Nicarao and Chorotega cultures, the Chachapoya culture, the Thule and Dorset in northern Canada, the Fremont culture, and probably many other smaller groups as well. If any of you guys out there watching this know any of these disappeared cultures I didn't mention, please tell us in the comments. A lot of other cultures in addition to these I've mentioned were written off as being wiped out by the arriving Europeans through war and disease. But the truth is that most were in major decline before Columbus even arrived. And this mini ice age period is just the beginning of it. It seems America was experiencing a major cataclysmic reset during this period before Columbus, a dark age where cold, disease, drought, and natural disaster were powerful enough to take out large populated city centers, leaving them in absolute ruin, unrecognizable from the surrounding geology in many cases. Just take a look at some of these sites, the largest being the Mississippian site of Cahokia, where we clearly see a huge pyramid once stood here. It looks just like the pyramids we see at Olmec cities, or at Teotihuacan, buried by some kind of unknown cause. Archaeological evidence has shown this site had been abandoned for about 150 years before the time the Spanish arrived, and we have no idea why exactly. And there's tens of thousands of smaller mound sites dotted along the major rivers of the US. We find them all over the eastern region, and as far as the Mississippi River and its tributaries to the west, and as far north as Minnesota. Think of the major rivers as highways. The natives would use these to travel from mound city to mound city. Only in their prime, these mounds were more than just hills. And they weren't just platforms to build houses on either, or simple burial mounds. Bricks and stones have been found at the base of some of these. These were sacred temples of the time, just like we see with mounds in Ireland, built by the Celts, or the Mayan cities, or as mentioned before, Teotihuacan, where cultures from all over would gather for annual rituals, including a flood myth reenactment, where the entire site would be intentionally flooded and the pyramids would look like islands. We find a similar belief in ancient Egypt, where the pyramids represent the primordial mound from which the god Ra created the world. But now, much like the ziggurats of Babylon, or the Mesoamerican pyramids, or the pyramids in China, the sites all lie in ruin, swept over with earth and grass, possibly intentionally buried.
That brings me to another observation because World Economic Forum, this is actually discussion, and I'm not quite sure I understand why, but they're talking about planting trees around some of these pyramids again, and I don't really quite understand what that's all about.
Or wiped out by extreme natural disaster. In their heyday, these sites were adorned with all sorts of structures, stairs, bricks that have been turned back to mud, seashells, copper, mica, and they looked like huge pyramid-shaped temples. At Cahokia, they even had erected a wood henge, looking like something from the British Isles. And it's clear this was their calendar. People would travel from everywhere to see this place in its prime. There's even evidence they had contact with the tribes in the Southwest and the Aztec in Mexico. These Mississippians had no iron tools, but they did use copper mined from the Great Lakes region pretty extensively. Their art and ornaments were copper. Their farming equipment and building tools were mostly copper. But after the downfall of this once great civilization along the Mississippi, Native Americans almost all forgot this technology and regressed back to stone tools.
So, again, this is something that can happen all over again. And I wanted to play 2 different documentaries before I had done this stream, and I just didn't get the opportunity to do it yet. And in the future, I will go ahead and do it. But um, the Mayan culture and the Amazonian culture were very technologically savvy cultures. And I think that what happened is that this big weather event that wiped things out, and they all migrated. And I think that that's who these people are. They migrated from the areas that were destroyed.
Around the year 1350. So what happened that wiped out such a large and organized civilization? There's of course more ruins than just the mounds though. In the Southwest, we have the ancestral Pueblo culture ruins at places like Chaco Canyon, Mesa Verde, and Canyon de Chelly. Some of these being extremely well-built cliffside dwellings. In some of the driest
I think that some of these dwellings were built that way to protect them from the elements of what was still happening with the weather, um, possibly electrical storms and such. And that's based off of what they were painting in the caves and on the walls. They were showing the plasma, what they were seeing in the sky. Uh, um, Also, the dolmens. I think that's also what the dolmens were.
areas of the country, they had irrigation systems that transported water for miles, bringing it right to their cliffside homes. Nobody knows why they built this way, but these areas were thought to have been abandoned around the 13th century. The other tribes around the Southwest all have their own stories of a once massive civilization that lived in the Southwest region of the US. The Hopi, in their oral tradition, have stories of multiple previous resets, the last of which wiped out this great civilization. According to Hopi belief, Spider Grandmother led the Hopi people to the current world from a previous one. Along the way, they passed through and left behind earlier peoples who had built large structures and lived advanced lives, but had failed to maintain spiritual harmony. The Zuni also tell stories of their ancestors who built large cities and had a great civilization. Their stories say these people were searching for what they call the center place, which is where the Zuni inhabit now. Like the Hopi and Aztec, they have complex migration stories in which their ancestors traveled through different regions and encountered various ancient peoples along the way. These migrations are often guided by spiritual beings, and the Zuni recognized that earlier, ancient civilizations had existed and left behind significant structures and knowledge. These Hopi and Zuni people, as well as the Navajo, share a belief in a people called the Kachinas, spiritual beings that are closely connected to their history in the land. Some stories suggest that the Kachinas themselves may have been associated with ancient peoples who were more advanced and built these massive structures in the region. But where are these now? Well, one theory suggests those structures built by a predecessor civilization before this past reset are in such ruin, they're almost indistinguishable from the surrounding geology. We see this a lot with ancient structures. Seemingly entire walls of brick and stone have melded into the earth.
See, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the idea of like Jay Dreamers speaks of a plasma apocalypse, and these are examples of that. Melted down buildings. Potentially, there could have been large trees and such, but these are the remnants of it.
Sometimes they appear to be melted like volcanic lava flows, or carved out of sheer rock. Oftentimes, structures have been flooded over and buried in sediment, and baked in this mud for so many thousands of years that they were petrified in stone, and their molecular structure changes just as a fossil changes from bone, calcium phosphate, to calcite, iron, or silica. Same process that petrifies trees. And the Southwest is full of massive geological formations that look just like ruins turned to stone. And of course, this is where we find huge petrified forests as well. Many of the formations in the region are actually named as if they're some kind of ancient temple. And another aspect of this theory is the gold. In a lot of these old stories from Native Americans and early explorers, the cities were adorned with gold and other precious metals. And if that were the case, and this area suffered an intense cataclysm like a great flood, all this gold would have sunk beneath the lighter sediment and been reshaped under enormous pressure and heat until it resembles gold nuggets again. And we find huge gold deposits around many of these areas, such as in Arizona and Nevada. Alright, so we talked about the thousands of mound sites that went abandoned around 1350, and the abandonment of ancestral Pueblo sites like Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde in the 1200s, and also the Viking sites in Greenland and Canada that were abandoned sometime around the 14th and 15th century, and also the stories from the tribes in the Southwest of a great predecessor civilization. But what could be the reason for all this? Historians usually say these civilizations were destroyed from things like war, drought, famine, or disease, but that's just part of the bigger picture. The Viking colonies and predecessors to modern-day Inuit tribes, the Dorset and Thule cultures, experienced massive reductions in populations across the north due to something we refer to now as the Little Ice Age. This began around the year 1300 and lasted for over 500 years. Many try to act like this only affected the northern regions, but in actuality it caused changes all over North America, and Europe too. Before this period, North America was much warmer and experienced better growing seasons, especially the Southwest. This area is thought to have been much wetter at the time and more temperate. North America in general was much more wet in its past. I have a video going into detail on all this, I'll link that below, but around 10,000 years ago, North America had a giant freshwater lake around the size of the Caspian Sea in central Canada, reaching down into northern Minnesota, and many other large lakes comparable to the Great Lakes dotted the western US. And the Great Lakes themselves were much larger. Even the Central Valley in California was completely filled with water. This was all that melted water from the huge Laurentide ice sheet that covered North America just around 12,000 years ago. Over thousands of years, the water slowly drained from these lakes, drying out the land and leaving us with what we have today. So before this Little Ice Age period, around 1300, North America still had remnants of these huge lakes. The Great Lakes may have been much larger. The Great Salt Lake in Utah was 3 or 4 times larger than it is today. Lake Tulare in the California Central Valley was still there, and many others as well. But with the freezing of much of the northern regions, the water stopped flowing, and areas started to dry up significantly. This could have depleted the cliff dwellers' unknown water source. It could have made regions of the northern US, such as Illinois, where Cahokia is, very harsh in the winter, making farming difficult. And all this would have caused war and strife and destabilization. We're not exactly sure what caused this cooling of the Earth during the Little Ice Age, but it was most likely volcanic eruptions blocking the sun, or changes in solar activity caused by a grand solar minimum. But the extent of destruction in the Americas could have been huge. And this anomalous activity from the sun or a massive volcano would have no doubt coincided with huge natural disasters, of which we can see the results of. We talked about the Great Drought in the southeast, but there was also massive flooding of the Mississippi River that could have been responsible for burying much of these mound sites. According to oral traditions, there was a great earthquake in the Rio Grande Valley, sometime around the 1490s. And we can see through geological evidence that extremely severe hurricanes were flooding the eastern seaboard regularly at this time. There was a large earthquake on the New Madrid fault line, spoken of in oral histories as well around 1480, as well as major earthquakes in the northwest around the 1450s. And Mount St. Helena also erupted sometime in the 13th century. Even after this period from the 1500s to the 1800s, when we were actually recording these sorts of things, America experienced record-breaking natural disasters.
So we're getting these growing pains again. Just when I saw that artwork of that big wave, reminded me of watching the news reports this morning of those waves that's hitting over in Florida. I had posted a video, I think two weeks ago, about up near Mount Shasta, a smell of sulfur, and I the locals were reporting that that's what they were smelling, but come to find out, it wasn't coming from the volcano; it was coming from the ocean. So I think these volcanoes are all getting ready to wake up again. I mean, they've been waking up all over these past 4 years, in particular. But like I said, it's a lot to pay close attention to.
The 9.0 Cascade earthquake in the 1700s, and the 8.1 New Madrid earthquake in 1811, or the 7.9 1906 San Francisco earthquake. In Native American mythologies, it's often believed that the god deities are responsible for such natural disasters. The Cherokee and Lakota believe in creatures called thunder beings and wind spirits, supernatural entities associated with thunderstorms and the weather, whose battles and conflicts are often seen as manifesting as great storms. Or the Kachinas and the Hopi spoken of earlier, whose conflicts often involve battles to maintain balance and harmony in the world. These remind me of the battles the gods have in other mythologies, like the Greek, Germanic, Semitic, and the Vedic. In the Vedic or Hindu texts, the gods at times obtain advanced weaponry that have great powers of destruction. One of them, called the Brahmastra, is said to completely wipe out entire regions. It's said to be a fiery weapon that creates a fierce fireball, blazing up with terrible flames and countless horrendous thunder flashes. When discharged, all nature, including trees, oceans, and animals, tremble. The sky surrounds with flames, glaciers melt, and mountains shatter with copious noise all around. It causes collateral damage to every useful resource in a given area, and prevents even a single blade of grass from ever growing in that area again. It is said that there will be no rainfall in that area for 12 Brahma years. The Native American oral stories also speak of the Great Flood that wiped out a predecessor people. We talked about the Aztec and Hopi having this story, but many other tribes share this belief, including the Cherokee, Iroquois, Lakota, Ojibwe, Navajo, and many others. So many cataclysmic events took place in America's past, from the melting of the Laurentide ice sheets to extreme drought in the Southwest, and major record-breaking earthquakes and flooding, much of which took place during the period just before the arrival of Columbus, during the onset of the mini ice age in 1300 AD. Some have theorized that during this time, the Americas actually experienced rapid geological changes as well, lowering of sea levels due to the buildup of ice around the poles, causing the changes we see on old maps compared to today. One, for example, was a map of Lake Superior in the mid-1700s that shows islands that are no longer above the water in Lake Superior, or maps that show certain regions as they could have looked during glacial maximum. Alaska and the Bering Sea region were always depicted exactly as they would have looked during glacial maximum, on maps being written in the 15, 16, and 1700s. Maybe this little ice age froze more areas than we previously thought, and these map makers were simply recording what they saw. Sea levels on old maps look to be much lower, Florida looks exactly like it did when ocean levels were lower. And even Columbus's first letters back to the King and Queen of Spain say that Cuba, what he called Juana, was larger than Scotland and England combined, which it in fact is not, unless sea levels in this area were lower. This would also explain why the Vikings' routes from Iceland to Greenland were disrupted, because this ice reached much further south than scientists currently believe. And at least to some degree, sea levels were lowered. How could the creators of these old maps possibly have drawn these land masses, like we see in the Bering Strait region, exactly as they would have looked during the glacial maximum that took place around 12,000 years ago? It just doesn't make sense. Unless they recorded it exactly how it looked, and the sea levels were slightly lower, which isn't too far-fetched with the whole Little Ice Age phenomenon going on at this exact time. But if this is true, then what really was the extent of the destruction in North America? It was enough to take out massive, well-organized pyramid-building civilizations that were spread out all across the land, so it must have been something major. But from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like this was just a singular event. There were probably multiple events that took place striking at the population numbers. It seems to me that this well-organized, advanced pre-Columbus America was destroyed gradually, piece by piece, and the arrival of Europeans was only the final nail in the coffin. That is, if we believe Columbus really was the first. There's another theory that speculates on the arrival of a previous people from Europe, a secret mission completed by the powerful elites of the time. Some wonder if they had a hand in this destruction of America, intentionally wiping out civilizations to make way for a new, completely fresh continent where they could inhabit. The knowledge of the land to the west was well known among elites before Columbus. Even Columbus himself was not the first to try and get funding for an expedition. He was just the first to publicly receive it. It's very possible some wealthy group could have made the journey in private, and could have been doing so for hundreds of years. It was a popular belief among the Christian world that the land to the west was a place set aside by God to be revealed in the end times. Many believed it to be a sacred land, possibly the place where the Garden of Eden was, where Adam and Eve were banished from. So the elites of Europe sought after it and wanted to make this a paradise in their own image. They believed it was their original homeland, their promised land, New Jerusalem. Much like the legendary city of Atlantis or Shambhala. We see the Spanish attempt to do this with the conquistadors and the destruction of the Mesoamericans and Incan people. But some theorize they were doing this long before the arrival of Columbus and Cortez, in secret, trying to cleanse the land and wipe it clean to erase this pagan history of the natives and bring about their version of a paradise on earth where the second coming could take place. Secret societies were also heavily involved in this. I'll link to our Knights Templar playlist below. There's all sorts of evidence showing that the Templar visited America long before Columbus. The monks associated with the Templar and other societies knew about America going all the way back to the 6th century AD. That video is on that playlist as well. And the Knights Templar very well could have shared this same aspiration for a new Atlantis or promised land. They were fleeing persecution from the rest of Europe after all. These huge Templar armies could have spread disease rapidly across the region in the 12 and 1300s. And the ones they didn't kill through sickness they could have taken down in war. And the later Spanish would have swept away and destroyed all evidence of anybody claiming the land before them, especially a disgraced group of knights that was supposed to be extinct. Some say this was why Columbus sailed with a red cross on his sails, because the natives would have recognized this symbol. And not only that, but the natives across the Americas shared symbols with the Europeans they could have picked up from this Templar contact. Symbols that look similar to the Templar cross exist, as well as the Hamza symbol. And the swastika are all found all throughout North America. Among these, the tribes we've spoken of, including the Mississippians and the Mesoamericans, and in the Southwest. However, there were also early explorers after Columbus that claimed to have traveled to great cities of gold and precious stones that existed at the time, but have never been documented. The first and most notable was Francisco de Orellana, who was the first to travel up the Amazon River. He claimed to have seen great cities with huge populated city centers and temples along the river. He even claimed to find the legendary tribe of Amazon warriors, who the Greek myths said lives at the farthest ends of the known world, giving the Amazon River its name. But nobody ever found evidence of his claims. Up until just recently, historians were convinced he was embellishing his accounts. But with
I don't think he was embellishing his accounts. I think that what we're seeing is just people having to relocate over and over again. You hear about about Plato speaking about Atlantis. Those could possibly have even have been refugees from whoever lived in those lands, moved over to where the Amazons were and the Maya. This is just a story that seems to happen over and over again, and the people keep knowledge and technology to a certain point, and I'm almost curious if this is kind of what's happening again. A lot of people just got wiped out in that flood and mudslides, and I can't even imagine what's going to happen to the people in Florida. But we've got refugees coming in from all over the world, and illegals and all that talk, and it just seems like a preparation for another wipeout of civilizations. I don't know.
With the invention of LiDAR scanning, we can see huge structures once existed that are almost completely flattened and taken over by the rainforest. All over the Amazon, lost ancient structures are being discovered, and the claims of early explorers are being verified. But it's not just South America where we find these stories. Explorers like Giovanni da Verrazzano and Jean Olifanske in the 16th century reported finding a city of gold along a river in the northeast United States that they called Norumbega. It was alleged that the houses had pillars of gold and the inhabitants were adorned in pearls on their heads, but no one ever found out what exactly they were referring to. Also in the 16th century, a ship set out along the Gulf Coast to colonize the area they called La Florida. A storm took them out along the coast of modern-day Texas, leaving only a few survivors. Among them, a previously enslaved man by the name of Esteban the Moor, who said natives in the area found them on the brink of death and brought them to their sacred land, the 7 cities of gold, Cibola. Esteban the Moor claimed to have seen this great city with his own eyes, and he vowed to return, but he spent the rest of his life searching the southwest US and Mexico, and never found the 7 cities of gold again. So what happened in America during this time? We know the mini ice age took place with droughts and flooding of the Mississippi, but I think the extent of this could be vastly underestimated. For example, to have taken out such huge cities full of people, it would have had to have been cataclysmic. I think it's very possible the ocean levels could have been changing rapidly, and earthquakes and hurricanes were often much more powerful at the time. This is a fact. The oral histories of the natives speak of this, and it's unlikely that all these early explorers were exaggerating. It's just going to take more time and resources to prove them right. So next time you see a hill or some kind of geological formation, consider that it may be very ancient ruins that have been wiped clean through natural disaster.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears here. Now we're going to start looking into all the craziness that we're seeing happen in corruption that's going on with the land now. This is a video that was 3 years ago, and it's titled Planned North Carolina Lithium Mine.
Well, we just started it. So.
Yeah, so we just moved here 2 years ago, and so we kind of wanted to do the whole, like organic grazing and homestead, and so it's not even like a mile, right? It's like right across the street, and it's like maybe 200 feet where they're gonna start building the fence. So like for sure, like we will see it.
So we're at a state where we actually don't know what we're doing because we don't really have an option of moving right now, especially with the economy and inflation and everything. And like we go back and forth on this so much, right? Because we definitely do not want to live here if they do come through. We don't want to raise our kids here and risk everything.
So that was 3 years ago, this video. And now that area is destroyed. So now this is going to talk about the similarity of like what happened in Lahaina and what's happening for the land.
So the more I'm looking into this whole situation, the worse it's getting. We really need to talk about what's happening in North Carolina specifically. I don't know if this is happening in other areas. I've only heard about North Carolina. My mom lives in North Carolina. She's not too far away from what happened. She lost power for about 4 days, but like everything is fine. Their roads were fine. But there are areas where that's not the case. Right now, in particular, Chimney Rock has been told that their entire town is federal property now. They can't even go back to their homes. There are bodies that are laying in the water. There are bodies that are laying under trees and in the debris, and they can't get to their family members. The federal government has said that that land and all of those bodies are now federal property. The federal government is not wanting to identify any of the bodies. They're just wanting to bulldoze over it and not even count how many people this natural disaster, if you want to call it that, has caused.
You heard that right. The land grab is in full swing, and the little town of Chimney Rock seems to be the very first casualty of this brutal attack. Now, for those of you who don't know, Chimney Rock is about 400 miles from where Hurricane Helene made landfall, and unfortunately, the little community of 140 Americans has been pretty much wiped out.
How long have you lived in Chimney Rock?
Born and raised.
And you said you're 32?
Yep.
Can you describe what this feels like?
At 7 o'clock, we went and checked the river, and it was just starting to hit the tops of the bridges. And when we got back to the firehouse and told the old chief that it was going to hit the bridges, because he was here in 96 when it flooded, and he looked at us like we were crazy.
So it kind of reminds me of the indigenous peoples when the new people came in to take over the land.
And according to official records, the county already has multiple mining operations for tin, gold, copper, and rare earth elements. So I guess it's not really a surprise the town became a target. Now, they can obviously confiscate land through eminent domain, but it looks like there might be another way for them to steal your home if you're not careful, at least according to this story.
I have a dire warning to those that are going to take the money. There is a contract at the beginning when the inspector gets there, before he starts inspecting.
I'm not quite sure if that's accurate. Again, this is just people's, this is the citizen journalism that I was talking about. People are just trying to use the communication with one another as much as they can to get answers.
Just $1 or $750. If you don't pay it back, they have the right to seize all of your.
Because I also heard FEMA making an announcement that that wasn't true.
Which isn't really going to be enough to help most folks anyway. This is sick if it turns out to be true, and I would really suggest you read the fine print before you end up signing anything. Now, according to some X users, they're already beginning to receive these forms from FEMA. I just hope these people do not end up getting scammed by the very people who are.
I'll go ahead and post the rest of that stream in the chat as well. But where I'm going with this is the corruption that can happen over events like this, and the politicians and the gaslighting. And here's an example of the gaslighting.
James Kaufman, World News Report today, October 6, 2024. God bless you and yours, no matter where you are in the world. Please subscribe, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell for critical future updates. The Biden administration caught up in more lies. The entire country knows that the Biden regime has been diverting FEMA funds from disaster relief to resources for illegal migrants walking across the open U.S. southern border. But thank goodness, Hurricane Helene survivors will receive $750 from FEMA. Well, once they get their electricity back and can get online and fill out the forms to request this amazing amount of assistance. The Democrats don't give a about you. It's very clear. Let's listen to some more double talk.
It's just categorically false. No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. The FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants. It's just categorical.
Let's hear that again.
No, Biden did not take FEMA relief money to use on migrants. The FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with city officials on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies.
Unbelievable. Okay, so the whole left-right paradigm is garbage, in my opinion. It's garbage. It's really frustrating. The Jimmy Dore show he's a comedian, and he was reading someone's, I don't know if it was a tweet or what, but I'm going to keep the sound off and I'm going to read it off to you. But he's a pretty funny guy.
Hey, come see us do stand-up comedy in Tempe, Arizona, Columbus, Ohio, Dayton, Cincinnati, Lexington, Burbank, and Honolulu. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.
So I thought it'd be nice for me to go ahead and share that so you guys can support the Jimmy Dore show. But let's turn this volume down and let's read what he's going to share. It's from someone called Ryan Tyre. If you're wondering why citizens are being turned away that are coming, this is from a hurricane that has happened before, and this was their experience. Why the citizens are being turned away that are coming to help in Tennessee and North Carolina. You'll want to hear my experience as someone who has been doing this as a private citizen for almost a decade. I was able to get into and out of Asheville. We brought food, water, fuel, and other supplies, as well as helped people affected by the floods. But there are reasons why they are not allowing outside help. I cannot confirm the reasons why in North Carolina, but I can tell you the reason in other storms I have worked. I'll explain below. Let me share with you the first disaster area that I finally realized that this was all about money. In the Florida Keys with Hurricane Irma, after Texas got hit with Harvey, I can't quite tell what you said, something finished our efforts in Texas and were the first citizen teams to make it to Key Largo. The federal agencies had US 1 shut down just south of Key Largo and wouldn't let anyone in or out, even though the road was okay to pass. We explained to them that we had boats, jet skis, food, water, chainsaws, and fuel to bring to these people. They didn't care and wouldn't let us in. It was night by that point, and you rarely saw the lights of vehicles in the distance on the individual keys, meaning the emergency response teams from FEMA weren't even working. It was all quiet. We decided that we would go anyway. We filled up the boats and jet skis with all that we could reasonably carry and went by water around all their BS blockades and around the law enforcement presence on the water. It was 87 miles by water to get to our first stop, Cudjoe Key and Sugarloaf Key. When we arrived, they were greeted by a homeowner. For privacy, I won't name him, though we have a video, who was elated to see us and all the supplies we brought. His house was in shambles. We started offloading supplies on the shoreline and helping to get them into what was left of his house. During that process, he explained to us that FEMA had set up a command center at a local high school on the island, but that they weren't doing anything to help the residents, not even bringing them water, which is something I've heard consistently happening in Tennessee and North Carolina. Instead, he explained that they were driving around using a loudspeaker, telling people to stay in their homes. They weren't even helping the homeowners with supplies. I was skeptical at first while he was telling me all of this, but then he said something that broke my heart. He told us that the people of the Keys were all in despair because they had just seen weeks before the overwhelming support for Texas with Hurricane Harvey by the citizens of this country. He and his neighbors on all of the Keys felt like Americans had forgotten about them completely because at this point, 5 days after landfall, all they had seen was FEMA and there was no help. The residents were cut off from the outside world. No cellular, no internet, no way to contact anyone or hear of any efforts to try to help them. The only communication they had was from a local radio station on Sugarloaf Key that was broadcasting in the morning to the surrounding keys. The man, after hearing that there were citizens trying to bring them help, but being refused entry by federal law enforcement, was visibly upset. He and his neighbors really thought the country had abandoned them. He insisted that we get in his waterlogged truck and that he would take us to the radio station so that we could go live on air to tell the citizens trapped in the Keys that we, the American people, were there to help and that the government was trying to stop our efforts. And that is exactly what we did. After that, we were determined to help as many people as we could, but we were met with red tape throughout the whole process and the time that we were in the Keys. We finally were able to talk to some authorities to let us down to the Faro Blanco Resort and Marathon towards the end of Boot Key. This was the same hotel where state and local authorities were staging their personnel, and they were happy to see us. I was able to coordinate several trucks full of supplies to be brought down to the EOC in Marathon. I was privy to the EOC meeting, but was informed in the meeting that all of the semi-trucks full of food, water, and hygiene supplies were to be turned around and not allowed to be offloaded for distribution by the EOC. The reason they gave us was that these donations were not from the companies on their preferred vendors list, and they would not accept them or give them to the residents of the Keys impacted by the storm. At this point, it was then that I realized that it was all about the money. These preferred vendors are getting part of the money being released by the state and federal government for each disaster. In turn, some of the vendors make it on the list because a friend gets them on the list, and in return for getting ridiculously outlandish amounts of compensation for the services they render, they give kickbacks. So accepting outside donations, even though they are on location and can help people now, they would rather let people suffer so they can get their kickbacks. This meeting solidified my resolve to help these people, regardless of what the greedy officials wanted. We were going to feed the lower keys. They were being neglected. I diverted all semi-trucks to the Faro Blanco Resort in Marathon and filled the entire first floor with pallets upon pallets of food, water, and essential supplies, and created a food pantry for residents to come and get anything and however much they needed. So this person continues to tell their experience of preferred vendors. And so I hear this happening again with these other hurricane victims of FEMA not allowing citizens to come in and help. So I'm not sure if you are all familiar with this this helicopter that was hovering over some supplies there in North Carolina, I think this was. And they ended up finding out it was the National Guard.
This incident with one of its helicopters. Take a look here. A viewer shared this video of the chopper coming entirely too close to Helene Recovery Distribution Site and blowing around a lot of items. This happened in Burnsville. Now, in a series of social media posts, the National Guard says this happened as they tried to deliver generators to the area to provide power to that distribution site. They say the crew did abort that landing and left the area when they saw what was happening. The National Guard says the crew is grounded for now, and they're working with the organization to identify how much damage the crew caused.
I hope that that's all it was, just an accident. I really do. So this is going to be more citizens speaking about.
FEMA's here. You know what FEMA just told us? We can't get you a phone. I have no ID. I have no way to pay for food. He has no way to get gas. We're stuck. So we have to sleep in a car that's leaking with the same clothes we've had on since the...
What's up, guys? I know that this is not the typical studio that you see me in. I am traveling right now, traveling home. I'm in Houston, but here's what I want to talk about, because I just put out a video a couple of days ago regarding this whole Hurricane Helene deal, and it's been getting great traction. I've been seeing a lot of people show their support and making donations, but here's what's really crazy is we're seeing this unfolding narrative right now that there's mainstream media, Washington Post, MSNBC, CNN, all of these left-leaning organizations, ironically, or not ironically, are saying that any report that on the ground in these places like North Carolina, specifically in the mountains, or even in Tennessee, the reports that people are not able to actually get the help that they need, or actually go and support and provide resources because they're being blocked by FEMA. All these organizations are saying that those are lies.
So I'm going to post his link for you to watch the rest of what he has to say about all of that. Treading lightly here, but I'll make sure to share that. This next one is by a channel called Real Estate Mindset. And this gentleman actually followed the money of FEMA because he wanted to make sure that he was trying to see what the accuracy was in these reports, if who was false and who was telling the truth. And so I'll play you a few minutes of that, and then I'll make sure to put the rest of that report down in the chat as well.
Most global lithium.
Helene was a wake-up call. This is literally catastrophic. And I can say without any dramatization whatsoever, if you choose to stay in one of those evacuation areas, you're going to die.
Breaking news as FEMA is broke by their own
disclosure. So today what we're going to do is take you guys under the hood and away from all of these crazy polarizing comments, and we're going to figure out whether or not FEMA is broke by using their own statements, reports, and balance sheets to really get to the bottom of this. And my question is, if they are broke, where did the money go? And if they're not broke, where is the money for these victims? Now, the second segment of this video is going to be on the absolute catastrophe that has just happened for the entire world's semiconductor industry. A special courts facility has just been obliterated in North Carolina that can send ripple effects through the supply chain issues that we already have. So all the conspiracy theorists that think there's a land grab going on with lithium mines, I thank you for setting me down that rabbit hole. But I think you might be looking at the wrong material. Now we're going to end the video out by tackling Hurricane Milton, and we're going to show you guys exactly what's going on with Hurricane Milton. We're going to listen to the mayor of Tampa issue evacuation orders and warn people that if they don't evacuate, they will not survive the hurricane that is currently about to smash into Florida either super late tonight or early in the morning. And I'm also going to show you guys the technology that we're using to track this hurricane as far as the pressure and the wind. And me and Mitch are going to talk about what to do and how to prepare for an absolute natural catastrophe like we're about to face within 24 hours. And before I go into the video, Mitch, happy Tuesday, sir. How are you? Graph here. While FEMA's disaster relief fund has the resources it requires right now to meet immediate needs, I wonder where they got that right now from. See how that connects there, Mitch? The fund does face a shortfall at the end of the year. This is the President of the United States. Without additional funding, FEMA would be required to forego longer-term recovery activities in favor of meeting urgent needs. The Congress should provide FEMA additional resources to avoid forcing the kind of unnecessary trade-off and to give the communities we serve. Remember, politicians, you serve these communities. Fact number 2, and this is just a warning, Majorca warns FEMA doesn't have enough funding to last through the hurricane season. And just so you guys know, this is the Secretary of Homeland Security. Okay, this isn't just some wacko. This is an official warning the nation that FEMA's broke. Fact number 3, earlier this year, FEMA initiated what's called the Immediate Needs Funding. Immediate Needs Funding Overview. And again, this is a fact. FEMA issued this to ensure available funding for these critical requirements. FEMA's chief financial officer can implement immediate needs funding guidance, which they did. When operating under INF, FEMA prioritizes response and immediate recovery effort funds by deprioritizing obligations to other activities. Fact number 4. Okay, this one may be the most damaging thing of all, Mitch. This is their disaster relief fund, their congressional monthly report for August 31st of 2024. And if you look down here, they're running in a deficit. Now, this was reported to Congress. You guys can go back and it's just a giant report. There's 28 pages. Go ahead and dig in. But long story short, they gave this to Congress and said they don't even have enough money to get through September without running in deficit. And this report was prior to Helene. So far, why are we conspiracy theorists? It's them that's saying they're broke. Fact number 5. Okay, this is from the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Inspector General, issued August 14th, 2024. I hope you guys are paying attention now. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, did not, again, okay, this is the Office of Inspector General's report. It will be linked in my description. FEMA did not ensure that it closed out disaster declarations in a timely manner. We reviewed 79 disaster declarations and identified 26 programs with nearly $9.4 million in unliquidated funds that remain open beyond their approved periods of performance. This situation is problematic. Here's what's very interesting about this report, Mitch. These are the open programs with POP extensions. Okay, so I want you to look at the initial date right here and the extension date and the unliquidated funds as of June 2023. We got lucky with this report. They've been working on this report for years. Look at this. Look at how much money
So I'm going to go ahead and share the rest of this report in the chat. But it's just showing the corruption in 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 FEMA and what is really happening with that. And it kind of reminds me of like what's going on with Ukraine or what's happening in Israel. You know, it's just you follow the numbers and it all starts to sort of make sense. But this is we're going to switch gears again, and this is something that was spoken about what's happening with the plan that's going on with the EU. And like I said, it's happening all over.
Yes, thank you, Tony. I would like to start to thank you for inviting me in this perfect panel. I'm happy to say that I don't agree with any of the other panelists, and that's good for a discussion, I think. We're not talking about an economic issue here. This is, I think, that we have to bear in mind. The report, the Draghi report of 400 pages is, of course, impressive and intimidating. And if you have read it, you may think that this is a story about economics, but it's not. Let me illustrate this. It seems to many that Winston Churchill, which is, of course, a big example for the European Commission, and they quote him all the time, said once, well, not everybody agrees, but people think that he said once, never let a good crisis go to waste. We're talking about risk management here. And Draghi is creating a crisis. And I think he's doing this very cleverly because we used to have a climate crisis the last couple of 5 to 8 years. And of course, people got tired of the climate crisis. So once in a while, you have to change your crisis. And now we have an economic crisis. And how did I come to think of it? Because I come from the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands we have a immigration crisis. At least our new government likes to think so. But the opposition is fighting this notion as hell. It is not an immigration crisis, and this well, they debated on it 24/7 all the time. If it's a crisis or not, and if it's a crisis, what kind of crisis is it? So this is politics in the EU. Angela Merkel, she said that at the immigration crisis, we are shoving us. And Draghi once said at the Euro crisis, whatever it takes. Well, that was his answer, to save the euro. So this tells us one thing. If politicians use one-liners to manage a crisis, you better beware. So to prepare myself for this event, I read the Draghi report, not the whole 400 pages. My husband is a journalist, and he said, if you need so many pages to send a message, then you have probably nothing to say. But okay, he's a journalist. I do think that we have a problem in Europe. We are lagging behind. The productivity is lagging behind. People don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. Young people want to have quality time at home. Nobody wants to work anymore. I know I'm exaggerating a little bit. But to make a long story short, Draghi states that the EU is lagging behind because of overregulation. He really tells us so. High energy prices. Yes, true. And geopolitical developments. Unfortunately, we have this thing in Eastern Europe and in the Middle East. And of course, we have upcoming competition from China. They bought all our stuff, they copied it, they improved it, and now we are in big trouble. In his foreword, he reminds us that Europe has fundamental values. And these fundamental values, you can read it if you want. It is really, to me, it's rather strange as a banker and an entrepreneur, that his fundamental values are prosperity, equity, freedom, peace, and democracy. You know, a democracy, okay, it's a fundamental value. And freedom, okay, it's a fundamental freedom. Peace, I think, is the main objective of the EU. And prosperity, well, this is not a value, this is an outcome of hard work, right? But he explains to us that these are all European values, and we are now in an economic crisis, and if we don't address this economic crisis, then these values are going to waste, and we will lose everything. And most importantly, the EU will lose its reason for existence. So in this small 3 lines, he makes the economy instrumental to the existence of the EU. This is a real objective. So now we're running around talking to each other about economics. Are we in a crisis or not? Just like in the Netherlands, by the way. So this is a déjà vu. But the real issue is what is the narrative of the European Commission? Why are they doing this? Why do they want to make us look like we have a crisis, feel a crisis? What's going on?
So let me speed this up and get her little summary of her solution. Let me see if I can find it.
To really make it possible for plants to grow. Well, this means that they have to enable the plant to grow. They have to create circumstances, low energy prices, no regulation, no taxation.
And there it is.
You know,
That's the
to
solution.
really make it possible for plants to grow. Well, this is.
So she's using the idea of a plant and how to make a plant grow, and speaking about the economy and to bring it back to life and it to be fruitful again. But just an interesting thing that's happening all over the world. Deconstructing, reconstructing, transhumanism. There's also a lot of talk about what's happening with HARP and the geoengineering.
WRAL climate change reporter Liz McLaughlin is separating fact from.
So this is mainstream media and what mainstream media has to say about disinformation.
Fiction.
For many in Western North Carolina, the destruction is personal.
It's surreal. Still trying to process. It is still difficult to take in.
James Broyhill took this drone video to assess the damage to his home in Lake Lure, where his family has vacationed for generations.
People take advantage of that for whatever reason and put out stories that are completely false.
As communities work to rebuild, misinformation is getting in the way. That includes one theory circulating that suggests the storm was caused by government manipulation. Rumors about weather control have been amplified by high-profile voices, including Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
This is now getting media coverage, and it's a trending hot issue, and I think a lot of people are taking advantage of that for selfish, nefarious, and political means.
Climate disinformation also circulated after the deadly wildfires in Maui and the heat waves across Europe last year, with conspiracy theorists blaming anything but what climate scientists agree is a shared driver: fossil fuel pollution.
So that's what mainstream media is still trying to tell everybody. But the citizen journalists are pulling up the patent.
Did you know that the U.S. Air Force had a plan back in 1996 to control the weather? I'm talking about the 1996 Air Force report titled Weather as a Force Multiplier. owning the weather in 2025. We're just months away from 2025, and with all the crazy weather we're seeing, Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Helene, you've got to ask, is this the end game they were planning? According to this report, by 2025, U.S. aerospace forces could have the capability to modify and control weather patterns to achieve military objectives. That means using emerging tech to shape the weather like a weapon, a literal force multiplier on the battlefield, from controlling storm clouds to even creating droughts. The report claims the military could use these capabilities to disrupt enemies or enhance operations. It's a high-risk, high-reward gamble, but the potential payoff is nothing short of complete dominance of the battlefield. July 1st, 1996, quote, weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. Abstract, in 2025, U.S. aerospace forces can own the weather by capitalizing on emerging technologies and focusing development of those technologies to warfighting applications. Such a capability offers the warfighter tools to shape the battle space in ways never before possible. It provides opportunities to impact operations across the full spectrum of conflict and is pertinent to all possible futures.
So this is going to be a stream that's going to break down all the different decades of weather modification patents. And I will share that with you in the chat as well. And this is also the same channel, End Times Production, and he's going to talk about how Bill Gates, our buddy Bill Gates, has patents for hurricanes.
So I found this article from 2009, and it describes a plan Bill Gates has to control hurricanes. Yes, you heard me right. Bill Gates wants to control hurricanes. Now, I wouldn't focus on the how and the why of this article. Instead, I would put my focus on the elephant in the room, and that is that Bill Gates wanted to, at the time of this article, or still wants to, who knows, spend his billions of dollars to control the weather, and specifically hurricanes. Quote, good news, folks. Microsoft founder Bill Gates has turned his attention to controlling the weather. 5 U.S. Patent and Trade Office patent applications, made public on July 9th, propose slowing hurricanes by pumping cold, deep ocean water in their paths from barges. If issued, the patents offer 18 years of legal rights to the idea for Gates and co-inventors, including climate scientist Ken Caldera of the Carnegie Institution of Washington. Hurricanes, most famously demonstrated by the deadly intensification of Hurricane Katrina before its landfall in 2005, draw strength from warm waters on the ocean's surface. The patents describe a system for strategically placing turbine-equipped barges in the path of the storms to chill sea surfaces with cold water pumped from the depths.
So I will make sure to share this as well. But Bill Gates he's got he's a busy guy. I'm going to show him doing something else here. But I'm going to go ahead and share the rest of that stream in the chat. And you guys can make up your mind for yourself. But for those who live here in the United States, I'm sure a lot of us are very aware of all of these train derailments, factory explosions, factory shutdowns. And this goes back to the comment that, let me go back here for a minute and share it with you. Let's see here. Some of the largest precious gemstones found in the last decade happen to be found in the Black Rock Hills, North Carolina. Okay. So this is a really interesting channel. This is Status Quo News. And he is a channel that is new to me, but I've listened to 3 of his streams so far, and he's done the most extensive journalism on these
in one area and been traveling.
Chemical plants that have been exploding in the land too, that is around these explosions. So now the land is contaminated, so the people can't live there.
Tell you the
Federal
truth,
government
I really
can come
don't.
in.
Yesterday, I vowed to myself I'm actually turning my phone off because I have pretty much been working for. And smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people to press.
Which, by the way, check out his flag. I thought that was pretty funny how he put the United States of Corporation of America. I thought that was pretty clever.
It's like the more people that will see this. Sunday, we started seeing reports of a chemical fire in a plant in Conyers, Georgia, which is about, I'd say, 30 miles east of Atlanta. And it's for BioLab is the name of it. So a lot of people immediately thought, wait a minute, is this bioweapons? It's not bioweapons. It just has the name BioLab. It seems fairly harmless. It makes pool and spa treatments. But once you have a massive chemical fire from a plant that makes pool and spa treatments, well, what's in pools and spas? That would be chlorine. What do they use in World War I as a chemical weapon? Chlorine gas. Colin, let's go through before we bring on Scott. For those that haven't seen this, I mean, just look at the images of this thing. And there's a lot of updates that I'm going to tell you. But this plume and this fire that they say was sparked by a sprinkler, a water sprinkler or something like that, malfunctioning. But this chemical plant fire is massive. And it is, by all reports, it is being seen and smelled. The chlorine, 50 miles, 75 miles, as far as Marietta, Georgia, which is over 50 miles away from Conyers, where this is. So this, to me, if I didn't know, if I was just looking at this, this looks like East Palestine to me, which we've been covering extensively. And obviously we're still covering, and we're going to give you an update and some breaking news, exclusive news on that in a bit. Joining me now, Scott Smith, who has been doing amazing work on East Palestine. He's an independent tester, has done over 30 trips to East Palestine, Ohio, and has also done a lot of testing and contamination testing in a whole lot of other areas, including Flint. So we were going to talk about East Palestine, but we obviously need to talk about this too, because this, by all intents and purposes, is still going on. And honestly, you're getting more accuracy from people on Twitter than Georgia's version of FEMA and the EPA. And I don't know about you, but it just seems like despite all of these happening in different places, it's kind of the same story and the same playbook being used. First, let me show you, because this is just staggering to me. But there was an alert that went out to residents in the affected area. I don't know within what radius, but I saw it on Twitter, and then people were sending this to me. Residents got this on their phone, I guess, nearby this plant. Public safety alert, Georgia Emergency Management Agency, Homeland Security Agency. So I guess that's Georgia's version of FEMA. On behalf of the Environmental Protection Division local area emergency, due to Rockdale County BioLab fire, the EPA is monitoring air quality for chlorine and related compounds. Chemical levels are, quote, all caps, unlikely to cause harm to most people.
So you kind of get an idea that we have a pattern going on. And I will make sure to share the rest of his stream. It's about an hour of information, and he's working really hard to follow what the proper steps are for these communities and what's happening to these communities with these chemical explosions. Unbelievable.
There's potentially a huge environmental disaster happening in Asheville, North Carolina, and everyone downriver. This is reportedly the IPEX plastic PVC factory. Everything looks to be destroyed, and chemicals have been leaked into the French Broad River.
It's probably the PVC, the powder form.
So far, there's no signs of the EPA or FEMA on location at this factory. And according to sources there, doesn't look like they're coming anytime soon.
Just pounds and pounds of this chemicals all over the place. And it's leaking right into the water system, into the French Broad. And there's other chemicals that it happened to. There's some kind of pebble-like material or chemical.
Now, what is...
I don't know. Is it just me, or is there a pattern that we see happening? It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. So on top of that, I got this in my news feed. We're going to switch gears again.
We are diving back into a puzzling issue we first told you about last night. Perhaps this has happened to you or somebody you know. Apparent mosquito bites leaving people with very odd symptoms like very swollen hands and intense pain.
Even some doctors are not sure what to think of it. Since our story aired, we've been inundated with emails and social media comments from viewers reporting similar reactions.
So News 4's Tanner De Leon has been talking to some of those folks today. Tanner, what are you finding out?
Well, each person has a similar story. They or their kid were bitten by a mosquito. It started swelling, burning, itching, and slightly painful. Some symptoms lasting hours, others lasting days.
I freaked out.
A worried mother seeing her baby swell up after being bit by mosquitoes.
My biggest fear was it swelling to the point where it could have problems with her arteries or closing her throat up or causing breathing issues, because it was huge, very, very big.
After seeing our first story air, she reached out to News 4.
I was like, that is crazy, because I thought we were the only ones happening to.
Her pediatrician told her it's an allergic reaction. But she, her husband, and their kids have never experienced something like this from a mosquito bite until the last couple months, and they aren't the only ones.
I've never had a reaction from a mosquito bite before. Of course, makes a normal little lump, but I've never had such a severe reaction from anything like that.
Many others flooding our emails and dropping comments.
So this is actually the second one that I had found, but there was another, the original story was about
An Oklahoma soccer team and their coach are perplexed. They say they've been bitten by mosquitoes. However, the symptoms extend beyond a normal bite.
News 4's Spencer Humphrey is here with what medical experts think may be happening. Spencer.
Yeah, guys, those bites left the team with some really swollen hands and intense pain, and doctors say it's certainly not normal. If evening after evening on grassy soccer fields has taught Lainey Singleton and the team she coaches one thing, it's that they know their bug bites.
I mean, we've all grown up in Oklahoma, all these girls and myself.
And they know whatever is biting them at Lightning Creek Park can't be your average mosquito.
In the rest of the report, they speak about their symptoms feeling like flu-like symptoms. A mosquito bite that gives you flu-like symptoms. So here's locally in my state.
Mosquito control is on the lookout for a new type of mosquito apparently spreading dangerous diseases in our area. Now officials, they need your help spotting them.
So your reporter Rachel Wolf is getting answers on what you need to know.
So we'll walk through here.
every container in the house.
David Smith with the Sacramento Yolo Mosquito and Vector Control District is walking through the backyard of this Land Park home looking for something very specific.
You can kind of see, especially on this container here, where that water line is. They'll lay their eggs individually there.
He's looking for mosquito larvae from the Aedes aegypti or yellow fever mosquito, which can carry debilitating diseases like dengue, chikungunya, or Zika, which leads to birth defects. And these mosquitoes differ from our native so-called house mosquitoes.
I see a trend happening here. I really do. And our buddy, the Jimmy Dore Show, talks about
Hey, come see us.
Violence, if you're
Should have free speech, but not for stuff that I don't want to hear.
this guy again.
That's what basically he's flexing again. Bill Gates, watch how he slips in, how he wants to censor free speech. And listen to what it's over, right? But watch this.
we should have free speech, but if you're inciting
We should have free speech, but not for stuff that I don't want to hear. That's what basically he's getting ready to say. Watch this. We should have free speech. No, you don't think so? Watch.
we should have free speech, but if you're inciting violence, if you're causing people not to take vaccines.
What? How are those two things equal?
That
What?
and violence are the two.
Let's want to hear it again.
We should have free speech, but if you're inciting violence, if you're causing people not to take vaccines, where are those boundaries that even the U.S.
The boundaries at the First Amendment. That's where it is. Why do you guys all have to act like this is some kind of new idea? Where are the boundaries? Even in the U.S., we already have the boundaries. We've had them for 400 years.
I still have people in my life that think that Bill Gates is a good guy. And I don't know. I mean, this guy's got patents for hurricanes. He made millions of dollars. That's what the rest of this skit is going to be about, is how much money he made off of those vaccines that we had to use for the past 4 years. The new vaccine that he wants to incorporate, which will be a nasal one for us to take up the nose. And this gentleman here has also supporting a company that releases genetically modified mosquitoes. And it's happened twice in my county this summer by this company, supported by this person. He apparently also owns a lot of land around here, and I'm curious if he, like Oprah Winfrey, is going to have access to purchasing a lot of the devastated land from these natural catastrophes. I don't know. This is something that I thought was interesting. This is going to be about a young lady from North Korea. And she's going to bring things into perspective for all of these whiny Americans that want to have socialism in their life. I had a relative about 10 years ago question me on why I thought the communism was a bad thing, and argued with me that it wasn't a bad thing, even though I had been to a communist country and witnessed the suffering of those people and how much their culture and their land and their rights were taken away from them. And I know a lot of it has to do with the state that I live in and the indoctrination of the school and the politics that she's influenced by. And she's just an example in my life of many people that I am around that I just cannot even believe the absurdity of the indoctrination and how dumbed down society has become. I'm embarrassed. But let's listen in on this.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope all's good wherever you are. In this video, we're going to look at a Q&A done by Yomni Park at a Young America Foundation event. She is a human rights activist, a North Korea defector, and a best-selling author. If you enjoy reading or audiobooks, I highly recommend her book, In Order to Live. That thing is quite the story. She's got a new book out at the moment called While Time Remains. I've not read it yet, but In Order to Live has to be one of the better books I've read in the last couple of years. Let's get into the video. I'll give you my thoughts after the clips.
Hi, I'm Alana. So since you've been in America, what is one thing that you think America or Americans take for granted that you love?
It's choice.
Choice.
I don't think Americans understand what a unique thing to have a choice. Choice to where you live, what you do, who you marry, what you even eat. When you go to restaurants, you have at least dozens of them to choose from. In North Korea, we don't have a cookbook because nobody can afford the ingredients to make different kinds of food. So I think that's what I see, that Americans don't understand how unique the way of life is here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alejandra. I'm from Venezuela, and I experienced not the same scenario, but obviously the dictator over there is a friend of Kim Jong-un. And I just have a question because the way I see the generation now is that they're so indoctrinated that there's pretty much no way to revert that damage that the left have caused. And do you think any possibility that we can change that in the near future, maybe?
Yeah, thank you. I definitely see that. I think, like people from Venezuela, Cuba, or Iran and North Korea, none of them want to live under socialism. That's why we escaped. And all these people living in democracy, they want to bring the socialism to this country. And the reason why I think they think that way is because of the American education system became a huge propaganda tool. It became an indoctrination camp, like North Korean schoolrooms. And I think once we realize what is getting into our children's minds, and also we realize how American media became liars, and they became a propaganda tool as well. Once we see that, and this hijacking of these big institutions, then I think we can change that. But first is definitely education, that our children getting brainwashed, and my son is too. I worry about that every day, and people really don't understand how bad it got in this country right now.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashley. I just have a quick question.
I've traveled throughout the world, and it broadened my horizons and made me really thankful for living in this country and listening to this lovely lady speak about her perspective and how she truly did suffer under that social system is, I think, a beautiful testimony, and things like this need to be shared. And this is another little short clip that I'm going to share with you on propaganda that's happening for divisive reasons between ethnic groups and religious groups. Find it here. Here it is. Let's see here. How do I share this tab?
So what brings you here today to support Palestinian rights? We as Jews are embarrassed what's happening there in the state of Israel in the Jewish name. And what's your message to the people of Palestine? They shouldn't give up the struggle. They should continue to fight and not give up the struggle against the state of Israel, because by the end, Palestine will be free, because this is truth, will succeed by the end. What's your message to the people of Palestine?
They should know we feel very shame what's going on there, especially they're doing everything in our name, in the name of Jews, in the name of the Torah, in the name of God. It's so shameful. We are with you. You have to know. The Zionists are strong. We are weak. But God is on our side. At the end of the day, the Palestinian flag will be on all Palestine, from the river to the sea.
Just another perspective, things to think about. I lost my spot here. A lot of stuff going on to confuse the hell out of all of us. Really living in very confusing times. And I'm going to leave you with one last video here. And thank you for those who have stopped by and seen bits and pieces of tonight's stream. Just wanted to share some of the things that have been on my mind and what I've been watching in terms of other people's perspectives. I'm not saying I necessarily agree or disagree, but that I just feel like I want to share it with you.
To listen very closely to what John Kerry is telling you they want to accomplish.
And I think the dislike of and anguish over social media is just growing and growing and growing. And it's part of our problem, particularly in democracies, in terms of building consensus around any issue. It's really hard to govern today. You can't, there's the referees we used to have to determine what's a fact and what isn't. The fact that kind of, been eviscerated to a certain degree.
So you heard that, right? This is the former Secretary of State, an American diplomat, a very prominent politician, and a very forward-facing figure of the Democrat Party in the United States today, telling the World Economic Forum, we in positions of power, the proverbial they, have anguish over social media platforms, over shows like this one, because it doesn't allow us to build consensus the same way we've traditionally built consensus in America in the past. The referees, his word, not mine, that we previously had in determining facts have been eviscerated, because in your pocket, the average person can pick and choose who they listen to and what sources they seek out. So we can't referee, aka censor, what we want to censor to build consensus.
And people go and that people self-select where they go for their news or for their information. And then you just get into a vicious cycle. So it's really, really hard, much harder to build consensus today than at any time in the 45, 50 years I've been involved in this. And there's a lot of discussion now about how you curb those entities in order to guarantee that you're going to have, some accountability on facts, et cetera.
I just heard Hillary saying the same thing last week. I just heard Hillary saying it, and I just heard Kamala talking about the same thing. So that's why I felt the need to do a stream like this. I generally try to stay away from putting any type of streams about politics or anything, but this is it almost sounds like our days are numbered. Our buddy Bill Gates, too, was speaking about coming out with an AI program that is going to suggest coming in and accessing the AI program when I was someone like myself doing a stream like this, and just zap, no more. We're not going to allow this disinformation to circulate, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens to the Constitution and the First Amendment. I don't know. But everybody, thanks for stopping by. I hope you have a good night, a good day, a good morning, and stay vigilant, be safe, be aware, and take care. I'm going to go ahead and play my little AI-generated song for you again. I had fun with that last time. I got some positive feedback about it. And so I'm going to play it for you one more time. Take care, everybody.
We chase the fleeting shadows of progress and of gain, while the roots of our existence withered in the rain. The stories of our forebears, like the whispers on the breeze, fade into the background as we bow to our knees. Yet in the electric pulse, a spark of hope remains, a chance to reconnect, to break free from the chains, to seek the truth within us, to remember who we are, and navigate the cosmos guided by our star. So let us rise from ashes, from the depths of our despair, embrace the electric universe and the wisdom that we share.